This is the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast with Greg Smith and Jay Foreman. Tell it to me straight up.
Hello, and welcome into the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast, proudly part of the Hale Varsity Network. I am Greg Smith, your Chicago representing grill master friend.
I'm Jay Foreman, your friendly Midwest Northerner, Minnesotan, by the way of Nebraska, Romeo Cornell Hayton co-host.
Did we start off hating on Romeo?
Oh, yeah, for 100%. What are you thinking?
I mean,
if we have to add a new segment, it's going to be, what are you thinking? Brother, what were you thinking?
But I feel like Romeo is one of those guys, and we're going to get off on a tangent already, but Romeo is one of those guys that it just feels like you want him to be better.
You do, because you want to know why everybody likes Romeo? Because he's always down to have a couple beers, it looks like, and some barbecue. You know, when they probably up in the coach's office, and you probably sitting up there after like 8 hours or looking at the same play, and you hit Romeo on the little pager, say, "Hey man, I got a 6-pack and some wings. You down?" And he'll be there. You don't even have to ask him. He's I'll be there. You want him to do well because he has a great personality, to be honest with you. But that was one of the dumbest things you could do. And I know the reason why is because the Houston Texans defense can't stop a clock right now. They can't even put stop on their stopwatch on their iPhone or whatever phone you got. But at the end of the day, it's harder to go the full length of the field, score a touchdown, and get two. With that, they put up the winning percentage or probability, and it was up in the 90%.
It's difficult.
Percentile. Yeah.
I mean, but otherwise,
the object of the game, of coaching is to win.
I mean, it is
because you're not in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, and you right because you already just paid Deshaun Watson, so win.
The only guy they kept, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I guess
if I'm JJ Watt, I'm going up in there seeing Cowboy Cal McNair and say, "Hey, listen here, homeboy, I love you. I am going to be the mayor of Houston when I'm done. You got to trade me to
at some
New
point,
England.
like I want to go somewhere where I got one last shot at trying to win something. If I'm JJ Watt,
and it's got to be this year because he's way long in the tooth.
Yeah, and just the injuries are really starting to catch up, and eventually, I feel like his play will kind of drop off a cliff.
Trade him to Pittsburgh.
It'll happen.
Trade him to Pittsburgh. You know, the brothers don't get that chance, but brothers really don't get that chance. But a brother will get that chance.
Yeah.
JJ Watt. He could say, I want to go to Pittsburgh, and they would make that happen.
I would like to see that.
Trade him for like a 6th-round pick and
It's so funny to think. This is the way that the NFL works, though, is that you would actually say a 6th-round pick for JJ Watt. And that would be totally fine. Like that would be something
they would just because that's what he'd want, and he would make it. They would make it happen.
So we are finally. We waited a long time to be able to say that it's game week for Nebraska. Like it's been going for 6 weeks.
Everybody else has been playing. Nebraska's been practicing.
So first of all, does it feel like to you? Does it feel like it's actual game week? Does this feel normal? Like we settled into the normal routine of what it normally looks like?
Not really, but I'm thinking hopefully Thursday or Friday it hits me like, okay, there's going to be a game, and then, Thursday would be 2 days, or Friday, there's a game tomorrow morning, bright and early at 11 a.m. For Nebraska, right? So
the big noon kickoff on the East Coast.
I think next week it'll be more like game week because until they kick off with the way the Big Ten has done things, I won't believe it till I see it. And it's almost like everybody else has been doing what Nebraska should have been doing. So it's almost like I'm not even really serious. You're really thinking that you're really serious about playing. I know Nebraska is, but until it happens, then it'll be game week. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see, where they're at, what's changed or what's gotten better. And how they measure up. There's no time like the present. I mean, look, man.
There definitely isn't the way that the first game is looking.
There is no fair dodging right now.
No.
Okay. Don't tell me that you want to play for all these months and you want all this other. You asking for all this noise. Yeah. Okay. Now you can't pick and choose your opponents. And this is one of the things. The main problem I have with the Nebraska fan base and Nebraska sometimes in general. You sometimes I think they want to compete and play on their own terms and want the easy way into the Big Ten championship. And I get it. since we've been in the Big Ten, we've probably played one of the hardest schedules, but we have not helped ourselves.
Right.
We've lost to teams that we shouldn't have. So why do you think you need to be rewarded with an easier schedule when you can't even beat the people that you're supposed to, that the Big Ten is thinking when you join that you're going to beat Northwestern on a consistent basis, Purdue on a consistent, Indiana on a consistent basis, and you're not going to be losing to like Troy and all these other teams in non-conference. So what have you earned? So now to go out there, if you want to get respect, you got to go earn it, and there's no other team to earn it against than Ohio State the first game of the season.
Right, and then back that up with then Wisconsin, the class of the West for many years now, in the second game of the season. But I think that what really, to me, it's starting to now settle in, and we're starting to feel like there's actually going to be a game. And in part because Scott Frost had his press conference today, along with all I think every captain spoke as well. And as you guys know, frequent listeners, hopefully, of the Straight Up Breakdown podcast, we start off each podcast with a segment that we call Coach Speak.
Coach Speak to Real Talk.
Where we kind of go through, and this time is actually going to be Scott Frost's debut on the show. No, it's not. No, you laughing. It's not necessarily a bad one. I just found this really interesting because we kind of, at least I shouldn't say we because I won't speak to everybody, came into this offseason thinking that the quarterback competition would not really be much of a competition. It would be kind of in name only to make sure that, you at least kept a little bit of a fire under Adrian Martinez and that, it would make Luke McCaffrey a little bit happier. But in the end, it wasn't really going to be a thing. Right. And then the last couple of weeks happened, and Scott Frost, some of his comments that he's made, especially when he said the offense moves exceptionally well when Luke McCaffrey is out there, I'm like, oh, okay, we might have ourselves a little bit of a battle. Well, today, Scott came out and announced that Adrian Martinez will be the starting quarterback, but then he said this little nugget. First, let me say, I don't know how much separation there is between the guys after he dropped the news of Adrian being the quarterback. I think we have 2 first-string quarterbacks. That's how we feel about them. What did he actually mean there?
Well, I mean, he what he meant was, we have 2 average guys, and if you looked, and there was another quote when he said, well, if Luke was Adrian and had that experience, then Luke would have won. So what it tells you is we got both guys that are equal, and he went with the more known commodity because Adrian has played in more games, which is generally what I thought was going to happen, what actually Nebraska needed to happen, what Scott would have liked to happen. I think probably Adrian did a little bit tiny more to win the job. I don't think it was by much. I don't think Adrian has earned the right not to look over his shoulder, and I think Luke has earned the right to have legitimate snaps during the game. Now, however they decide to divvy it up, if it's 3 series to 1 in the first half, where he gets 2 legitimate series, then Luke's going to have to go out there and make lemonade out of lemons and go out there and prove to everybody on a big stage, obviously with no fans, how good he is and put a lot of truth behind the backup quarterback is the one everybody loves. And I know I'm assuming from a coaching standpoint, from Scott's standpoint, they believe in Adrian. They want him to take a step forward. If anything, last year, he was very, didn't get better, probably stayed, even.
I think he was more even in his sophomore year to his freshman year, and I think that people give it credit for. I think at this point we've gotten to where people, I think, overrate that freshman season a little bit, and I think they underrate or think he was worse in his sophomore season. Right. I think they were a lot closer than people kind of realize.
Yeah, and I think that the way he played his freshman year was masked by having an NFL running back and a legit number 1 Big Ten.
And
NFL
you have that
receiver.
Freshman kind of coding on it where you say, okay, it looks pretty good for a freshman.
Everything that you do as a freshman is magnified. It's like for every 5-yard gain is equal to 25. And he had some big games, but it was everything kind of lined up for him to do well. You played Ohio State the week before they were playing Michigan. You played Minnesota when they had been on the road for four weeks in a row, and you beat the brakes off of them. And he had guys, and Divine was starting to really catch fire, which made his job a lot easier. Now, he did do the things he needed to do, but he came in with Heisman hype, and so the expectations were out of this world. And I don't think he was ready for it because he had the expectations that were out of this world. He lost 2 NFL caliber players, and then he had to take on some leadership role, and he hadn't even been on campus more than like 18 months or a year. Right. And you're talking about leading guys that have been here before. Like, you really haven't done anything.
And I wonder, too, and I'm glad you brought up the leadership point because he was also voted a captain again by the team.
That's when you know he was starting, to be honest. That
was really the moment.
That was Scott just kind of verified everything that was verified on Saturday or Sunday when the captains were leaked out.
And I think that the point, too, about him having not been on campus that long when he was thrust into being a captain last year is taken because I often think about this team and a lot of guys that are here and some of the senior leaders, especially now on the team, DiCaprio Boodles, Colin Millers, guys like that have been around for a while. They have seen a lot. And Colin Miller he hinted at this, and this is not to say that they were looking at Adrian sideways or anything like that last year when he was voted captain, but you just have to me, think about it kind of naturally and say it would be kind of difficult if you were a senior on last year's team to immediately wrap your arms around such a young guy being a captain and being thrust into that leadership role by his head coach. Because remember, Scott kept saying that we've got to make him a leader. We got to bring more of that out of him. That's his next step. Because remember, he kept being asked, like, what's the next step for Adrian Martinez in his sophomore year? And he kept saying we just need him to be a leader. We need him to lead this team and take over an ownership of this team. And I could see where older guys on the team that had seen so much through multiple coaching staffs would be at least reluctant to warm up to that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one, you haven't done much. I mean, they're with him day in and day out, so they know the difference between what's being written on Twitter and by the pundits versus what's happening day to day and who's really making that offense go. And it was Divine that made the offense go his freshman year. And then you're trying to anoint him to be a leader when, as a sophomore, a true sophomore, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's still trying to get to campus on time and get to class on time and make sure his workouts. If I had been here and I've been grinding for 4 years and been through some crap, don't come talking to me. Tell me what
you've been through. You might have been through 3 coaches.
Been through 3 coaches, and you're going to come try to motivate me, man. You just make sure that you hold up your end of the bargain, right? Because I've answered the bell, and I've been on some crappy teams and have to deal with a change in ADs and change in head coaches and stuff like that. So, I think they probably pushed him out there too far. And I'm a firm believer in leadership. It's not something that you can make somebody be or teach them how to be. It's either you're a natural leader in whatever type of leadership role you're in or you're not.
Right.
And that's the way it is, because you look at any quarterback. Some are fiery quarterbacks. Some are very cerebral. Some are more, talk more one-on-one behind the scenes. And if you're not somebody that knows how to motivate somebody or knows or is really truly not afraid to get in somebody's face, regardless of how you're playing, and maybe you don't have that respect yet, or you haven't really earned your stripes per se, it's something that you can't make somebody do. And and I think it affected his game because he was trying to do so many things besides just play football. And you heard at the end of the season where the preparation wasn't there, right? And so that's also on him and also a little bit on the coaches, because that's your job to make sure that he's prepared.
Right.
To make sure that you need to make sure that he is locked in this room right here, and you better know not only what you're doing, what all 11 people are supposed to do, and then some. And that's the biggest thing you need. And that's something that he's probably had to learn. He's had to probably go back and watch a lot of crappy film that he didn't like to watch. And
make yourself uncomfortable.
And that's the best thing that you could do for him, because he should have that ingrained in his mind, what's obviously not the right thing to do. And maybe it's the cause, which ended up being the effect, which is his bad play. The cause was lack of preparation. Mm-hmm. So if you can deal with that on the front end, it's going to make him a better player. It might not, equate to an extra 500 yards passing, but maybe you can complete some more third downs. Maybe you can have him, fight for an extra yard or two. Maybe he can make more better in-game decisions, when to stay in bounds, when to really push the tempo, when to be a little bit slower. One of the things about a quarterback, he's like a point guard. And we talk a lot offline about Rondo, right? What makes him really good, what makes him actually probably a Hall of Fame player is his ability to play the position. And if you equate it to football, it's the ability to play pitch and catch with your receivers. The guy is wide open, hit him. and then continue on and down the field, right? And then when you need to make a play, you can take that upon yourself, i.e. like Tommy Frazier, and make a play in money time. And if you go back and look at Tommy, and even you look at Scott, they could start out 2 for 8, 2 for 9. But when it's money time, them brothers were going 3 for 4,
right.
4 for 5, touchdowns, and throwing it 4 or 5 times on, that series in order to either get the team back in the game or seal the game. And in order to get to that level for Adrian, it starts with preparation. It starts with being coached hard, and also being coached hard in the moment. Because there's a difference between getting coached in the moment when you make a mistake and making sure that mistake is as big as it would be in the game, or 2 or 3 hours goes past, you lifted, got you a little energy drink, so and all this other recovery stuff, and then you go watch the film. The sting is off. And when you play that position of quarterback, and when you're playing middle linebacker, there is no plays off. Right. There's got to be a selfless position, which then leads to more personal success.
But it's funny is that when you talk about kind of seeing those guys, former quarterbacks that were great at Nebraska, what Adrian is kind of trying to put himself into, a long way to get there, but to get closer to that is seeing that success, though. And I think I honestly think that is a huge thing, and it's wrapped up in the confidence. It's something that this program at this point just needs. Like, they need to see those tough situations where, okay, they're down, by 10 points in the second half, then we starting to chip away. We got that stop. We just got that touchdown. We did not have the kind of random special teams touchdown that then come over that to break our backs. Like, we just we keep coming. We know and we have confidence that even when the chips are down and that things are piling against us right now, that we have something in us to then turn things around and get it going. And I think that Adrian is a part of that. I think like I said, it's a thing that needs to go through the whole team. But that's also something that I think is hard to develop in a team, in a program that has seemingly had so many things go against it.
Snake bit.
Yeah, in the last 5-6 years.
10.
Yeah.
Because even back when Pelini was there, they'd go up against Ohio State. And I remember being up there, they were up 21-0, ended up getting boat raced by 30.
Right.
Okay, so you're talking about the team thing. You know what Adrian really needs to really cement himself in Nebraska history? You know what he needs? You know what separates him from being, a stat sheet stuffer and the real deal? Wins.
Right.
Period. That's it. I'm telling you, you win. When have you ever heard them say, "Oh, Tommy Frazier, 1,500 yards passing, 1,000 yards running"?
I could not tell you for the life of me Tommy Frazier's stats.
You can't tell me Tommy Frazier, Jerry Taggies, Steve Taylor, Eric Crouch. Well, he won the Heisman, so I'm sure.
And that's the only reason that comes up.
That's
is
only
because he won the
comes.
Heisman. Yeah.
But any of the great quarterbacks in Nebraska, Scott Frost, right? You don't think about nothing but when he won and when he laid it on the line physically in order to lead his team into a victory and a hard-fought victory.
Yeah.
That's what you think about. Frost throwing that pass to Davidson and continue when an offense and have to pass and get into a scoring, match with Missouri when us as defense was having a bad day, him answering the bell, right? You think about him against Tennessee and just running through them cats, right? You think about that's what you think about. So instead of, because the day of football right now, everybody that plays quarterback, plays running back, plays receiver, their stats are going to be overblown.
Right.
But the main stat that wins is wins and losses. We have to win. If Adrian wins, he's going to cement himself higher and higher of the pecking order. If he continues to lose, he's going to be just like Jamal Lord. And when you look at Jamal Lord's stats,
man,
compared to Eric Crouch's,
yeah.
Well, you know the difference between them two? Jamal Lord was their team was getting their heads beat in all the time.
He put up some monster
stupid
seasons.
stats.
I think Jamal was maybe the quarterback when I first got here.
Right.
And so I used to always argue he was the first quarterback I knew. So it was like, that was my guy. And when I was in school, and I was like, man, Jamal, okay, y'all don't know about this dude. He actually putting up a lot of stats. But then you look up, and especially like kind of for Nebraska standards, even though they had a couple nice seasons in the beginning of that, I think they won 10 games maybe that first year I was here. And then it just kind of fell off from there. But nobody talks about Jamal Lord, to your point, because even though when you look at like his total yardage or his rushing stats as a quarterback, all of that stuff, he's way up there on the all-time list. But he gets skipped over completely.
He's not even on it. You think even like a Joe Gans or even Zach Taylor. right? They were on where they were scoring a lot of points and putting up a lot of yards. But you getting boat race on national TV against Colorado, you throwing for 300-some yards. People don't really care about that. It's about wins and losses.
Right.
And so that's what they really need to focus on. What do they have to do to win? And there's plenty of ways you can win. And it doesn't always have to be offense, getting 600 yards and, Adrian having, 450 of those and all that other stuff. Right. I mean, because if you win, all that stuff is going to get magnified anyways.
Right.
Because if Adrian goes, let's just play devil's advocate. Say we lost Ohio State. Somehow we run the table, and play him again, and he has 120 yards rushing and like 220 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but he gets a couple huge first downs in a physical game, and we end up upsetting them. But his whole stats throughout the whole year is just, I wouldn't say middle of the road, but really good, but not great. What do you think they're going to focus on if they got him, for Big Ten Player of the Year or the Heisman in that case? They're going to talk about the drive or the drives that he completed to win those games in the big games. They're not going to say, oh, well, he threw. I mean, if that was the case, then we'll have a bunch of Andre Wares and all these guys out there
right.
from Nevada being thought of as the best players in the nation. So it comes down to wins and losses. The stats and stuff will get massaged as much as need be if that time comes, for individual accolades or awards.
Yeah, and that'll be the development of Adrian is something that will be kind of it is a big engine driver for this team this year, and it's something that is just going to be talked about all season long. But one of the things I definitely wanted to hit on today is we kind of do a little bit of a season preview and do it in a little bit of a non-traditional way.
Let's break that down.
I don't want to kind of go through and break down position groups, anything like that. I think to me, the central theme of this year, well, really this year period outside of sports, but really for the Huskers and for college football is just we don't know. Like There are just so many things that are just giant question marks out there. So I just want to run through a couple of the things to us that are big questions that need to be answered for the Huskers for this 2020 season. I'm going to start us off with the one that I was thinking about this on the drive over, because the biggest question to me is, will this offensive line start off the season as good as we kind of think they can be, or will this end up being a situation, as we've kind of seen the first 2 years under Frost and Greg Austin, is they start a little slower and then they look better by the end of the season? Which version of that do we get? Because if we get the fast start offensive line, I think that that's as important as anything that we could have happen on the offense. And we talked a lot about Adrian off the top, but just think about what would help him the most. And that offensive line is dominant from game one, in which you have now a returning center who the snap issues for what we saw in the season are behind him, right?
Right.
And they like him a lot,
right.
And he's athletic as all get out there playing that center spot. You have a left tackle in Brendan Hymas, who the coaching staff loves and thinks is an NFL guy. Greg Austin has said that before, right? You have Bo Wilson at left guard, who will end up being a guy who I think he ends up now kind of being the punching bag of that group.
Right.
But I think that's because you kind of like everyone else a little bit more, even though he wasn't fully healthy last year. We mentioned the center. You have Matt Farniok moving to right guard, which I think that he's better suited as a guard.
That's his
and then
body
you
type.
have the guy that has been anointed is not right, because I think that this was always the path that he was going to be on. Bryce Benhart being a guy who's a redshirt freshman now, locking down that starting right tackle spot. You should be good.
Right.
Like, the offensive line should be good. Greg Austin is very highly thought of.
And you had depth.
Yes, and now you start to have guys that, okay, they didn't win maybe those guard spots, like, Trent Hickson, Ethan Piper, guys like that. Right. We're like, okay, well, if they had to come in the game, we feel pretty good. Turner Corcoran, top 100 recruit coming in last year. It would be hard for a freshman, but if he had to get in there for a little bit, you feel good. Brandt Banks is somebody who they've been high on since he's been on campus as a potential backup left tackle. The backup right tackle is still a little bit of a question, but you hope you don't have to get there, right? To me, this offensive line starts out hot. It opens up things for Adrian because, obviously he's getting better protection in the pass game. But then to me, it's almost more about the rushing attack.
Right.
Because I think Dedrick Mills could have a really nice season. The backup running back, whoever that's going to be, as Scott said today as well, is going to be green. It's going to be somebody that hasn't played a lot. But running back, to me, if you get a freshman that's pretty good, like, they can put up decent, especially in this
numbers.
offense.
In this offense,
this offense with a good offensive line.
Right.
So to me, I have my eye on that offensive line to start this season.
That's the most important thing on the team. I always say that you're only going to go as far as your offense and defensive line goes, or takes you. So we're focusing on the offense. The offensive line, here's what it does. When you look at UCF when they were down there with Scott, they had 2 or 3 running backs that could take it to the house.
Right.
So their offensive line was performing at a pretty high clip, right? Then you look at the first year when he was in Nebraska when the offense really started to take off. The running back, everybody thinks it's a quarterback-driven offense. In my opinion, this is my opinion, speaking from a defensive standpoint, if I was preparing to play against Nebraska when they are really rolling. Mm-hmm. What makes everything go, and you think of Oregon, you think of UCF, you think of everything, is their ability to win at the line of scrimmage, win at the point of attack, and also the cutback lanes for their inside-outside zone.
Edges,
which sets up their play action pass, which sets up their zone read, the QB option, all that stuff. So to answer your question, if that offensive line makes it easier for Dedrick Mills to start off hot, establish the physical presence that he is, to wear teams out, because the offensive line I don't think is going to necessarily wear the defense out. What's going to wear the defense out is Dedrick Mills coming, right? Because he's a one-cut guy, and he's physical, and he runs behind his pads.
I like him. I like him as well.
I do. So what that also is going to do is going to allow you to open up with the play-action pass, which is going to hopefully allow our tight ends to be more of a factor, right? Which is more appealing to all these recruits out there. Wink, wink,
Yes,
right?
it is, right?
Which then also is going to lead to more predictable coverages that's going to allow Adrian to play quarterback position a lot more efficient, which I talked about before, playing pitch and catch, which then is going to allow the receivers to develop faster because they're only going to get 1 or 2 coverages based on what they were able to do in the run game,
right?
Which then will, when you add it all together, is going to actually open up the playbook to do some trick plays and stuff like that to really keep guys off balance. Maybe the slot screen will work this year. It didn't work last year against Iowa. That could set it up, but then you can run. You can run it more frequent and do some stuff. So I think that the offensive line will set the tone. It's going to set the tone for the whole team. If they can not only be physical in the run game, efficient, and communicate a lot better in the pass protection, but then also the big thing that's hurt this whole team on both sides of the ball, or actually on all 3 sides, if you count special teams, or I do, is penalties.
Yes.
So it's one thing to play hard. It's one thing to be physical, but you have to be able to do it without shooting yourself in the foot. And what I mean by this, if it's 3rd and 2 and you bust off a 10-yard run, nobody wants to see you guys walking back with a a holding penalty away from the ball, or like when we played Purdue and we needed to go for it you get that half a yard or 1 yard. And the offensive tackle runs right past the guy that hits the quarterback. Right. You can't. Those things have got to be finished, and it's not even. And that has nothing to do with recruits. That has nothing to do with star rankings. It really has nothing to do, in a lot of ways, with coaching. It's individual choices to go out there and do your job, come back to the huddle, and continue to do it again.
Discipline.
And discipline. But there is self-discipline, because at this point, like. Yes, it's a lot of coaching, but when you get out there and you're playing, and really when you're getting out there playing without the crowd, it is just you guys out there playing.
Yeah, that's gonna be a whole different thing.
It's like
you can't blame the crowd. I got
went
confused.
Out there in the parking lot and we just said, you know what, Sasha, we'll put you in some pads and we're gonna line up. There is nothing out that you can't. That's what I'm saying. That nobody can save you. Right. And I know in there you go kind of like back and forth. Is it coaching or is it the players? Like, the excuse of talent is over, right. At least from my end. I know there's going to be everything. The funny thing,
everybody wants more talent.
Everything of you know what's so funny about roster? If you ever listen to Nick Saban in the offseason, he always is talking about I need to improve my roster. He's the best coach in the nation is still talking about improving his roster. He's always him or Alabama and Georgia have been going back and forth the last like 4 years, 1 or 2 recruiting classes. Right. So nobody's roster is ever perfect, because if they did, they wish they could go get every single recruit. They hit their maximum of reaching their potential, and they end up being all conference.
And you
players.
Still wouldn't, because we're going to have injuries on top of that.
So you got to go out there and play. And so, yeah, it's a big thing with the offensive line, and that makes everybody else better. And it will make Adrian better, but it starts with the offensive line and the ability to have one A running back, and then a close 2B running back as well.
But I also wonder too about what you said about the offensive line kind of setting the tone by being physical. Is that Greg Austin said something that kind of caught my eye the last time that we talked to him, where he was saying that we have to have bread and butter plays, and we've been butter and bread for a long time. It's a real good quote. Greg Austin, that's a good quote when he sits down and talks to you. But I thought that was interesting, because then Matt Farniok came up today and he spoke and talked about how, about the freshman running backs, and how he thought that those guys would get in there and be a little jittery in the backfield because they're used to coming from high school where you can just run around everybody. But he said that wasn't happening. And he said that they came in and were just hitting the hole. And I wonder if there's 2 reasons for that. One, they see that behavior from Dedrick Mills, right? The guy that's the unquestioned leader in their room. And then the second thing is because Greg Austin, kind of as the run game coordinator now, is now kind of putting his fingerprints on things just a little bit more, where he's saying, okay, we're going to have to come out here and be physical, because the thing that always sticks with me is coming out of that Iowa game where he says that, man, I thought we should have kept running the ball at him. And I thought that that's what we needed to do in our game plan to be able to kind of attack that Iowa defense. And that, to me, is just going to be really interesting to see how that mix plays out.
That's going to be it. But that's like you worried about family business of the distant cousins, Ray and Jerome. You know what I'm saying? I want to see how you making Thanksgiving dinner. I don't care how it gets done. Y'all can argue all you want in the kitchen. When it's time to eat, I want that meal cooked to perfection, right? But at the end of the day, it's gonna. I'm more interested now. We're starting to talk about physical, and I'm starting to get a little bit hyped up. I want to see who finishes plays. Okay. Because when you play offensive line, I know they all got man buns and stuff. I would have a team rule. The mustaches, all that stuff, gone. I'm straight up. The music, gone. Man buns or whatever it is, gone. Okay, you got to earn that stuff. But that's fine. This is a new day and age. I guess I'm old.
Come on, look. You the old guy in the club right now. It's okay.
Right, but I'm just saying, too much focus can be on that. Right? I can tell you, Kay Warner, that mustache he wouldn't have seen the light of day when I was there. Okay, but what I'm saying,
JP would have held him down and shaved it off.
Oh. Or he would have just shaved one of the sides off. If you want to be cute, we make sure you look real cute when you walk around campus, and you better not shave it off when you get home, or you're going to be, get these things put on you. But at the end of the day, when you play offensive line, you could be as nice as you want outside of football. Right. When you play offensive line, you have to be a prick. Yeah. You have to be, and you can't be nice. And to be honest with you, we've had way too many nice guys. And I remember one time when I think I went down to talk to Mike Riley in the team. Mm-hmm. And I forget the guys. Remember the running back that was committed to Wisconsin?
Jordan Stevenson.
Yeah, and he had he had the dad bod belly.
Yeah, he came out like it was a weird. Like he had spent the summer not working out and eating mama's cooking. Like it was a.
But he was eating mama's cooking. But he could practice forever, and he still had some speed. Well, I went down there and talked, and he was sleepy. He was asleep up there. So I took a pin, threw it, and hit him. Say, dude, well, I'm here talking, man. You're going to give me the respect, dude. You know what I'm saying? So I started getting a little hype, and I brought out a couple props and stuff, and Coach Riley didn't like it. But the moral of the story is I tried to explain to him, when you can do whatever you want outside when you're playing football. But when you play football, there is no nice, right? And somebody asked me about the team when a couple days ago, I don't know what radio station I was on. I said, you know what? The biggest problem I have with those guys, if my daughter was in college, I'd probably contemplate letting all those dudes date my daughter. And that's not what you want. You want some guys that are just a little off. You know what I'm saying?
Especially on a couple of positions.
Because when you play offense and defensive line, you just can't. You aren't normal. That's a thankless position.
Yeah. Unless you're the best of the best. And it's usually like one of those guys on your team if you're good. Like it's one of them, and then the rest of them you just don't really know. Right.
Like if this is going to be the pipeline, supposedly, there's no comparison. But Bo Wilson is going to be the Joe Wilkes. He needs to be our Joe Wilkes. So if you don't know anything about Joe Wilkes, when we had the great Nebraska pipeline, he was the tone setter. He was the guy that was nasty. He was the guy that was the fight starter in practice, right? But, you had Zach Wiegert, Zadiska, Brendan Stye, Aaron Graham. All those guys had great NFL careers. But Joe Wilkes was the guy that was the walk-on, had to work himself in there, but he was straight nasty. He'll poke your eyes out. He'll kick you when you're down. That's what you need to play offensive line. And it's not about being dirty. You just gotta have one of those guys.
Like, and I think you do, but I think you need, like it's funny you said, because I agree with you completely, because you need those guys on offense and defense, because it part of it is it sets the tone for your team. But because it makes it to where when you go into a game, that guy's not going to let you get pushed around.
No.
Right? And I think there's something to that about having somebody, that has your back, but also if things are going wrong, they're going to buck up and really get into it, right? Like they're not going to just wilt under the pressure.
Right.
And a lot of that comes off of that attitude and aggression that you have from the beginning.
Right. And then the more nasty that your offensive line is, the more nasty that your front seven and defense or your defensive line and linebackers will be.
Yeah, they have to match that.
They have to match
because otherwise you're just going to get
right.
get dominated.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
There's got to be a time that you got to be tired of getting your butt kicked, and it's not about talent anymore.
Right.
And it's definitely ain't about opportunity, because there's been plenty of opportunity. If you wanted to start, it's here. 9 wins in 2 seasons. Nobody's job is in concrete.
Which is always funny to me too, when not the 9 wins in 2 years, but what Scott said this again today, where every position is an open competition. It's not just about the quarterback position. I sometimes wonder how much of that is coach speak and how much of it is real. But I do think that they're in a situation where no one should really have a starting spot locked up coming into this season. And you're at the point now in the program, especially with now three full recruiting classes, where there's enough depth, or there should be, based on kind of the recruiting rankings, that a guy should be nipping at your heels to take your spot.
Sure. And
even a guy that you think is going to be like Cam Taylor-Britt. I think he's going to be. I think he's a good player. I think he's going to have a good season.
Right.
But even he should have somebody that he's looking over his shoulder a little bit, saying, while at the same time teaching that guy and bringing him along, he's also looking at him saying, okay, if I don't stay sharp, this guy's coming. Like, you should really start to build that within the program.
You need to have good competition, and there's nothing wrong with being out there if you're competing with somebody and he goes out and, just say, for instance, at the linebacker position, he goes out in his 2 series and he has 5 tackles, or he has like 3 tackles and he's a factor in another one, that you want to go out there and match it.
Right.
And it's all playing within the scheme of the defense. You're thinking individually, or you're playing individually and thinking collectively. The better that Jay Foreman and Greg Smith play is better for the team, within the scheme. The problem is sometimes we got guys going out there to try to, the betterment for them is the betterment for them. Right. And then you see Iowa, run a counter cutback to the house and hits his head on the goalpost because guys want to do their own thing. And so it's something that's, has got to get weeded out, but I think they do have enough depth to provide legitimate competition. I think they have enough depth that we're ideally in a ideal coach's world, that you're going to have your starters and guys that are not only giving them blows, but also there's not a big drop off. That's how you can build a team where you're reloading, and that this guy coming in after, say, Taylor Britt goes on and hopefully gets drafted to the NFL, that you've seen enough of this guy where you think, he's ready to step into a starter role because he's already played somewhat of a starter amount of plays, or he's shown enough in his short amount of time at playing that he can handle the load. Where you really see teams fall off is where the guy leaves and goes and he's graduated or gone to the NFL, and the next guy come in, he's starting over. So essentially you're pushing reset at that position. And if you do that at some really, really critical positions, like, quarterback's a little bit different, but like at corner or like linebacker or like in the offensive line where you haven't got,
your center,
where guys that aren't in there at least getting some sort of, reps during the season, it's really hard to replicate that in practice and then go out there against teams that they're going to bite back and fight back and then attack you in certain ways because they know that you haven't played.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think Nebraska has a couple of guys that fit into that category. And we mentioned one of them, Bryce Benhart, who did get to play. Remember, and I've said this to you before, the best compliment I can give Bryce Benhart is he went in for that Wisconsin game, and I didn't notice him anymore, right? Like, that's always, to me, for an offensive lineman, that's kind of step one. You want to, I mean, if he's out there just pancaking everybody, great, right? But if he is also out there and you don't hear his name. Yeah, you don't hear his name, you don't see the guy that he's supposed to be blocking go making unblocked sacks, like that's okay, especially in that case, a true freshman just out there getting
against that defense too.
Against that defense. On the flip side, also on the defensive line, Ty Robinson was like this, right? Where he went in and he played well right away. And I think once you start to really build that, and it does not have to be a lot of guys, but just enough to where you can sprinkle these guys in, it builds up the confidence, because now what we're saying coming into this year is, I expect Bryce Benhart to be pretty good. I expect Ty Robinson to probably be a starter when they go out there to start this season when they play on Saturday. And I think that those are the building blocks that you have to get to.
Those are the foundation pieces that you need in order to start to get over the hump, be respectable at the line of scrimmage, which will lead to wins. And when you think of big Ty Robinson, you think also Casey Rogers too.
He did the same thing.
Okay, so when they got in against Wisconsin, and they faced all conference, they had an all conference guard. I think he was first or second team guard, and Ty Robinson got into him with good hand placement. Didn't actually won the line of scrimmage, reestablished the line of scrimmage, and made a play. Mm-hmm. He was doing things that guys that had played all season didn't. He played with good pad level, had good knee bend. Was physical. He could all the check marks that you need from a technique standpoint, and then also make the play. That means he's a football player as well. That had to give the defensive coaches and the whole coaching staff a lot of confidence going into the season, because it also, for not only their confidence, but the players' confidence was even more. So and I've been in this position actually differently because I came just straight from redshirt to starting. Right. So when we jumped out there Thursday, boy, my butt was puckered up tight. You know what I mean? I mean, I'd been in practice before, right? But I'm going against Oklahoma State, So, but with these guys, when they're training all season, so I can equate it to when I'm going into my second year, is that it's not too big for them. It's not a surprise for them anymore, and they're also thinking, okay, I did okay as a redshirt, as a freshman. This is what I need to do better. It actually fuels them to even work harder and to become better, is because they got that little taste of success, and then also they got that confidence that they can actually play at that level. They all say they can play coming out of high school. Right. They all say they want to come in and start, but when you come into Big Ten, you're playing against grown men.
And it's funny because I'm laughing because it's like regular job as recruiting analyst. I hear that all the time. Oh man, I'm gonna go in and I think I can start right away and this and that. And I always just kind of laugh and just I want to say and I don't. Just wait till you get here and see what it's like, because I still think, and especially guys that are not from the area, like in Nebraska recruits nationally, they always have. And when you get these guys from other places, not in the Big Ten footprint, I think that they have a perception that the Big Ten is still kind of like slow and big, and like that's just it. So I'm going to come in and do my thing, and it'll be totally fine. Going to lead. Yeah, and that's just not how it works. And I think that people get to the Big Ten and realize that it's not like your like older brother or your older cousin.
It's not like it's not like your dad that talking about.
Because it's so varied. It's you can play in consecutive weeks, and Nebraska's going to kind of do this, where you play Ohio State, who has all of the skill and talent, but also has a more it's still a spread scheme, but it's a little more power in there, starting from the urban thing. But then you're going to play Wisconsin, who is a lot more traditional. You'll play Purdue at some point, who is another blend. You'll play Minnesota, who also wants to beat you up. And then Iowa, who just wants to get in an alley fight. Like, there's a bunch of different
Indiana wants to be a little bit physical, but they'll still try to just attack you on the outside. Maryland's going to try to ideally they'd like to throw it all around the park and stuff like that.
But the other thing is too is what you notice what we said about every one of those teams. Every team starts with that physicality, but then some of them really have a lot of skill, and you don't. Penn State is kind of like that too, where you just don't realize that. And I think that there is a learning curve with that, and you see it. And guys eventually, hopefully, get over that and realize, okay, we got to buckle up. Yeah. But that's why you always have to temper a little bit of expectation about guys coming in.
But you know what their biggest shock is for guys, especially to come here to Nebraska, because this is the only thing we know, is that if they're recruiting a kid, say he's a 4-star recruit and he's from Texas, I always say that the Florida kids, Texas kids, California kids, and down south kids, Alabama and Georgia. They think their high school football is like semi-pros.
Yeah, everybody thinks that theirs is the best.
They just invented football, and they play they play with a different type of football or something, right? You know what their biggest shock is when they get here to Nebraska, and obviously if you come in this year or when you come in even in Scott's first recruiting class or his second, is that you get here and you have a losing program, which we are right now, right? And there's actually guys that can actually play.
Right, that even though the team wasn't what they wanted to be, there are a lot of guys here that can play.
They can play, that either maybe they were injured or just have been, kept in on the shelf to develop, over time. That guys can actually play. And a recruit's ability to deal with competition and fight through it, you can't put a star ranking on that.
Right.
And then being away from home and dealing with, not being treated like you are on your recruiting trip and you're just a guy on the team and you got to earn everything that you get. It's hard for guys to deal with because a lot of times in the way that kids are coached right now, and I coach a lot of youth sports, is that these parents want everything given to their kid. Now there's a lot of, obviously these kids get into Division I level, are special athletes, but that doesn't mean just that you don't have to earn it.
Right.
And it sets them up for long-term failure. I know from experience from my high school. Okay, I ain't naming no names. Okay, I know what the background is. You know what I'm saying? I know how hard it was when I was there, player. You feel where I'm going?
I know where you're going.
I know when I talked to one of my coaches back home, and I know exactly what he said. So I know what happened when you get here. It's tough, man. I mean, I'm not sitting there, like, there was times when I walked back to Abel Dorm and I was like, you know what? I wanted to pack up this Chevrolet Celebrity. I had like 2 bags of clothes, okay,
right,
and a TV. I could put that in the trunk, hit up 80, 35. There's times I wanted to quit. Competition's tough.
But you also have to have guys too, though, that, and I'm sure you had this, that, okay, when you felt like that, there were other guys on the team or even in your position room group that had also been through that, right, and came through the other end and then had some success. Right. I think that that's also part of it.
It is
that sometimes you get, like, if you're on the team now or over the last couple of years and things get bumpy for you, you look around and you go, oh, well, that guy didn't make it work to the level that they really wanted to. It's not going to happen for me. I'm just going to bounce. And that's why when you start to, it's almost like kind of like success breeds success.
Right.
When you start to taste that a little bit, you then just have more and more stuff for everybody to lean on and to come together over. Right. Like, and I think that's very important for Nebraska to really start building that in a tangible way with wins. Right. We hear about it, and we hear about the camaraderie now, especially. It's different now, like the way that they talk about kind of the culture, people get tired of that. But the way people talk about that now, it sounds like it's better. The next step, though, is to have those wins and to have those success stories, so that guys can really say, okay, it happened for, I don't know, pick a guy, anybody. It happened for Colin Miller. Look at all the things he's been through. Right. If I'm then Nick Henrich or, I'm Luke Reimer, I say, okay, that guy's been through it. It's going to be okay.
Right. It's going to be all right. And then also he's going to tell you about it and teach you how to fight through it. Troy Dumas and Clint Brown was big for me. You know what I mean? Where they, Troy, he switched position, went from safety to linebacker. That's what I did. And, I struggled at it. And so did Troy. And then Troy ended up obviously having a great career and then going into the NFL. So it's a lot to be built in. One of the things I will say, I was watching Game Day and they had the story on Boston College and their coach coming in and, selling his vision. And Herb Street said one of the best things he said, he's like, when you come in and you have your vision, you're telling guys, and then you have success early, it's sustainable. Oh, yeah. And it makes it concrete. We aren't able to do that. Right. But once we start to get more wins, you'll see less transfers. You'll see more guys kind of fight through the hard times. Right now, it's too easy for guys to say, you know what, man, I'll just go to Florida A&M.
Right.
Or Florida Atlanta. I'll just go back home.
Yeah.
But also, I always tell people, guys that kind of turn it in that quick, you weren't going to win with those guys.
No, because the first sign of trouble. And this year, I don't want to go too hard on those guys because this year is a little different because of COVID, right? Yeah. But you still were kind of, having some of those issues before you didn't
COVID.
really need to have. Yeah, you didn't really need to have so many of those issues.
The first 2 weeks you on campus.
Yeah.
That's just a little. Yeah, it was just too much. And they were high maintenance during the recruiting process.
Now, see, I do think I do think that that's part of it. And I think part, especially because this staff, and I write about this a lot, is that this staff is very good at building long-term relationships with recruits, which is why, when you have guys like Nash Hutmacher or Turner Corcoran that had visited Nebraska a whole lot in their time and had built relationships no matter what other teams they had been talking to, Nebraska really had those hooks in with them and built those relationships. They seem to do very well with guys that they're able to do that with, and it feels like they have a better understanding of what kind of kid that is.
Right.
But the kids, and it would be interesting to really do a deep dive on this. The kids that really last second or those flips in the last minute, the guys that were kind of going back and forth, the ones that were doing signing day ceremonies where they really were kind of unsure.
The mom wanted them to go somewhere else.
Yeah, all of that stuff. It just seems like for whatever reason, those guys don't work out for Nebraska.
Because every time that they probably back home, the uncle giving them the business. I told you shouldn't be going to Nebraska. They got the COVID up there.
Right. See, like, that's not us. We keep you safe. Like, those sorts of things. Or, like, you could be here doing all of this. Like, that sort of stuff. So, and that'll be something, though, to track going forward. Like, how they kind of adjust that. Because I wonder if until they're winning at the level that they want to, and they can kind of be a little bit more selective with the kids from far away, how that will impact things, especially as the region has become stronger in recruiting. There's been a lot more regional recruits that you see other regional programs winning with. And they're coming to get them. You see Kansas State. Obviously, Iowa has done well with this in their state for a long time. Iowa State is building a program like this. Like, there's a lot of teams that are doing that. I would be curious to see if Nebraska makes a little bit more of a shift to that, just because of that homesickness factor and just it's just harder to then pack it up because, you're going back to Lawrence, Kansas instead of, just sticking it out here a couple hours away.
Right. But let's keep it real. When I was at Nebraska, we had plenty of Florida guys or different Texas and all that end up transferring or quitting. The only difference is you didn't hear about it in the Daily Nebraskan. Now you hear about it because they make an announcement on Twitter and they're transferring to go to different schools. So it happens all the time. And it's just part of the business, it's part of recruiting. If it used to be 25 scholarships per recruiting class, 100 kids on a team, it's no different than being a rookie in the NFL. You come in and say, you have 9 guys in your draft class. One or two will get cut. You're down to 7. After year 1, you'll probably be down to 6, maybe 5. Right. By the time you become a free agent or your contract's up, there's probably 4 of you left. Right. And that's the way it is with recruiting. It's very funny. I remember, I came in, there was a guy named Ted Butler who's he's doing really well in the business world. He's a center from Lincoln Southeast. He was gone pretty quick and the other guy's gone pretty quick and he just, here one day and gone the next.
Right. Yeah, and I definitely think that just having more access to the information makes that and of course everything is kind of magnified by losing too. If this was happening in Nebraska, it'd been winning.
You think Alabama doesn't have guys that
they have it all the time. It happens every year to Alabama. It's always high profile, but it just keeps on moving along. Right. But I want us to finish up with what is always my favorite segment, where we put somebody on blast.
Put them on blast.
So each week we kind of go through and we decide who we're going to put on blast for something that they either did or said. This week, I'm going to go with one that I feel like if I really wanted to, could do them every week. The NCAA is who I'm going to put on blast this week because it hit me as we were kind of going through getting ready for college football this week. Remember, Nick Saban had tested positive for COVID. Mm-hmm. Had to go home, and we were kind of talking offline about it, like how we knew he was going to continue to coach. And this is before we saw his daughter tweet out that he was watching from Zoom or something, and that he was yelling at people in practice, and he was doing well.
About. I need that for my kids.
Oh my goodness, that's so crazy. Like I wish they just released video of that. Right. But then it turned out that it was a false positive, right? Like he tested negative then three times,
and twice in 24 hours,
and then he was back on the field this Saturday. Well, then this weekend, we saw Jeff Brom, Purdue announced that their head coach, Jeff Brom, had tested positive, and he is in isolation
for 10 days.
For 10 days and needs to sit out, because if you're a coach in the Big Ten and you test positive, you're out 10 days. Players 21. And the reason that the 21 is in for the players because you also have to do the additional heart testing. If I was the coaches, I'd be like, hey, y'all don't want to do that stuff for me, but hey, whatever. That's
they got guaranteed contracts.
Right. Yeah, they got the contracts.
Their family will be all right.
Right. And so my thing is, and why I'm kind of upset with the NCAA at this point, and I'm putting them on blast, is it hit me through all of that, and we'll continue to see it through different coaches and different players testing positive. We have no uniform rules about any of this. We can go in the SEC, they have their own kind of rules, and Nick Saban ends up back on the sidelines. But if you then fudge the COVID data or you do anything shady, you can be fined your school $1 million. Yeah. Which, man, I wish that think about if Kevin Warren came out and said that, people would lose their minds if that was Kevin Warren that came out and said that you could be fined $1 million.
You think you think the governor in Michigan wasn't scared? They kidnapped Kevin Warren quick.
Right. What is happening? So and it's partially, but again, it's like he's built up, Greg Sankey has built up the SEC commissioner, the goodwill with the SEC.
Oh, yeah.
And Kevin Warren obviously clearly has not, right? Then we have the situation with Purdue where Jeff Brom has to be out 10 days. The ACC has their own rules. And so as we're going, I'm like, why couldn't the NCAA just make some of these, not even all of the rules, some of them needed to be uniform so that everybody, was on a level playing field, but just so it was easier for everybody to understand what has to happen.
Right. And just the NCAA hasn't really said anything.
Oh, no. They have been absolute. Mark Emmert, I forget how much he makes, but it's multi-million-dollars. And to do what at this point? Because they haven't really said anything.
He doing what me and you doing. He watching games.
Just hanging out.
With pizza, beer, chilling on Saturday.
Eating hot wings.
Yeah. Lemon pepper, right?
Right. Drinking Hail Ale at that. Get it at your local store.
Yeah. Who I want to put on blast, and it's down in the SEC country. If you saw that 2 weeks ago, I think they played Texas A&M. Florida Gators coach Dan Mullen said when he comes back to the Swamp and they were about to play LSU, he wanted 90,000 people. Right, just an ignorant statement. Florida is COVID central,
it's just going crazy.
And I will say this: Texas A&M, for only supposed to having 25,000 people, it looked like it was 50.
Yeah, they had at least 40 at that stadium.
At least 40, and I don't know if there were some real human cutouts, but they were sitting awful close proximity.
Right.
And so he gets on there after the game. He said, obviously the crowd was a factor, which is true. Mm-hmm. They lost on the road, got destroyed defensively, which is obviously Florida's bread and butter. They got embarrassed, and they were about to play LSU the next week. And he said he wanted to overstep his boundaries and get into, I guess, politics per se. And he said he wanted the Swamp full when they were playing LSU. Lo and behold, less than 48 hours later, who comes up COVID positive? Dan Mullen. So I'm putting you on blast for running your mouth. Then I'm gonna put you on double blast. Okay, I don't know how you got COVID, but your old lady be kissing players in the mouth. Okay,
if you've never seen the video of this, you have to Google it.
And I get it, man. I get it. You know, the wives are a big deal in coaching, and they make a lot of sacrifices. But I've never seen a grown woman that's married to somebody kiss anywhere from 18 to 22-year-old players for good luck in the mouth. Because I'm going to tell you, there's going to be a brother right there going to try to slip some tongue in there. So I'm putting the whole Dan
now
Mullen.
You're getting somebody cut.
I'm putting the whole Dan Mullen family thought process and the Florida Gators athletic department on blast.
The only person, I'm going to save one person in that, though, from Florida, and that's Scott Strickland, the athletic director at Florida, who said that Dan Mullen, he said that basically that Dan Mullen is better at calling plays than looking at the science.
Right.
After he said the thing about the Swamp.
So I'll say that. I'll take it back. I'm gonna peel it back. I'll save him from putting on blast, and I'm gonna put one of my best friends, Todd Grantham, from being on blast, and he's a defensive coordinator.
Right?
Everybody else, you on fully blast. If you're associated with Dan Mullen, everybody on offense, you on blast, and the whole Mullen family, you on blast. Period.
I had totally forgotten about the thing with the wife. I promise you, go Google it. There's videos out there. We are not making this up. It's very weird. I hope that it's not happening now. Come on, we in the age of Rona. I hope it's not happening.
There was pictures on there after he said that he was COVID positive. And she had Florida Gator paraphernalia on it. He only been there for a couple years. You can't self-impose that on you. If you do it once, that's bad. More than that, all right, you just on blast, period.
I mean,
like my daughter tells me, period.
I think that we might have our first entry in the Put 'em on Blast Hall of Fame. Right. That one might have to go in there. The whole Florida Gator operation.
At the end of every year, we need to have a vote for the top 5 Putting Them on Blast series. And we got to come up with a trophy.
Yeah,
I can get it to Dan Mullen. I'll just say, I'll tell Todd Grant.
He's on there.
Yeah,
like he's on there.
Right. If we give him, here you go, man. We're gonna send you a pack of beer or something, or a 6-pack of beer, man. Here you go, man. We just gonna put you on blast here in Omaha.
Oh man, that's great. That is a great place to leave this podcast. I'm happy that it's game week. Knocking on wood.
Nothing like game week. Hold on, man. They're gonna play. It's on. You know, like my grandpa is on like a pot of neck bone, so it's on.
Okay, it's on.
We're gonna see. It's show and tell time, man. You know, I mean, you can lift all them weights and all them little things. When you come out there, like the Ohio State, all my, Antoine Winfield and been texting me. My dad been calling me all morning, talking about them silver bullets are coming. Well, hey, we gotta go fight it. We got to go deal with it.
We are definitely going to find out. We will have something to react to. I'm excited for it. Now I'm happy.
You know what the biggest question for me is, man? I hope is how early I'm going to be up, if I'm going to actually work out and try to get in good graces, or if I'm just say, you know what, I'm just going to just start cracking them open.
Right. 11 a.m.
11 a.m. Because I'm a 5 o'clock riser, okay? And I know you are too.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk
4:45 every morning.
Because you be in the gym, I be chilling. So I feel bad. I was like, "Hey, Greg, up in the gym already." Okay, 5 o'clock, 5:30, you might hear it. Jay at it. And then if I start getting on that Twitter, I might have to start.
No, put the phone away. Don't, Herm Edwards, don't hit send. We do not want you off that Henny out here sending these tweets out. We do not want that. But we do want you to come back next time. We want you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast everywhere that you can listen to them. Rate us and leave us a 5-star review. If you only leave 4, I'm inclined to think you're a hater. Make sure that you're also checking out the other podcasts on the Hail Varsity Network, the Mind Your Own podcast, Varsity Club, More to It, and the Hail Varsity Radio Show. And we have an email that you can send us all of your suggestions and good feedback to at straightupbreakdown@hailvarsity.com. You can find us on Twitter at GregSmithHB and at Foreman5644. We will catch you next time.